Now let me talk about tablature, or what we call tab for short. The reason why I'm covering this is because this has become the standard way of reading music on guitar. And it's different than their normal notation, but there are some similar things that get carried over. So for instance, when we write rhythm in tablature, it's very similar to the rhythm that you'll see in standard notation. But let me go over some kind of pros and cons of it, and then I'll get into showing you how exactly it works. Basically, tab was designed as an easy way to kind of read music for guitar. And music standard notation is actually really hard to translate to this instrument, and that's kind of I think the reason of why it was developed. The other kind of advantage that it has is that it tells us very specific of where we need to play on the instrument. When we read standard notation, we read, let's say, the pitch E, there's actually multiple pitches of that same octave and that same note on the guitar, which is very different than, let's say, a piano or another instrument. So the tab helps solve that. We know exactly where to be playing or placing our fingers on the instrument. The other thing that's great about tabs is it's become such a universal tool for guitar players that you'll find thousands of free tabs online, and you'll find a lot of books, published books that use tabs. So it's the kind of, like I said, it's become the standard for reading music for guitarists. Now, the next thing is that most music that I've seen, especially popular music, has a tab version of it. So when you walk into, let's say, your music store and you pull any sort of guitar-based music, it's probably going to have a tab version of that, or tab built into it. Sometimes they give you both, the standard notation as well as the tab, which is kind of nice. Now, the cons is that it's not a universal language, meaning you could not take a tab sheet and hand it to a piano player and expect them to read that. So that's kind of one of the big downsides to it. So it's hard to communicate with other types of musicians if all you know is tab. The other thing is it's a little bit difficult to write rhythms with it, and you can do that. You can add rhythms to it, but it's not. There's certain rhythms that's just really hard to add to tabs. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're reading tablature. A lot of it doesn't even give you rhythm, so you have to be very familiar with the song to be able to mimic the rhythm style of that particular song. The next is a lot of the music hasn't, or not a lot, but some of the music hasn't been translated to tab. So for instance, music that wasn't guitar based, like piano or violin or flute, and they may not have a tab version of it. But most music today, it's amazing. They really have a lot of tabs out there. So I doubt you'll have a lot of problem with finding a tab version of a specific song that you're trying to learn. Now let's dive into actually understanding what this whole tab is about. Here we have a chart, and you can see it says tab, which again is tablature for short. And we have 6 lines. And every time I teach this to a student, they say the same thing. Well, it's upside down, which is this. The bottom line represents the 6th string on the guitar, or the biggest string, where the top line represents the smallest string, or the 1st string on guitar. And it is a little bit backwards, but my guess is that they were trying to mimic the normal notation in the sense of pitch direction. So on a normal staff, the pitch as it goes from low portion of the staff to the highest portion, that's going up in pitch. And the same thing basically is on tablature. So we have on the bottom line our lowest string and the lowest pitch on the guitar all the way to the 1st string that can produce the highest pitches on the instrument. So here's how it's labeled. We have the bottom line, like I said, is the 6th string, so that's our E, and then we have our 5th string A, then D, G, B, and E all the way to our 1st string. Now what we do is, when we want to communicate a note, we write a number on it. And what that number represents is the fret that we play on. And I'm going to show you how to actually play the frets with your left hand in the next section. But take a look at this. We have it says a 3 on the 5th string, and that basically means to play the 3rd fret on the 5th string. So you have to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 3 frets. So it's kind of like a grid. Now if we want to have consecutive notes, it looks like this. And this is basically means to play one note after the other. Sometimes we'll see all the notes stacked up vertically, which means a chord, and we'll get into what a chord is in a later lesson, but it basically sounds like this. Now let me get into some technique things, but before I do, I want to make a quick note on the fingerboard and what exactly the frets are. And the frets are these silver things that are lined up along the guitar. And the reason why I want to point this out is because it seems counterintuitive when I say play the 3rd fret. You actually don't play on top of the 3rd fret or the 5th fret, whatever it is. You actually want to play in between the frets. So if you can see where the dots are on your guitar, that's kind of like the location you want to play or place your finger, is basically in between. Now I don't have dots on every fret, just on a few locations. That helps us kind of find notes and positions on the instrument. I have a dot on my guitar, at least, is on the 3rd fret, the 5th fret, the 7th fret, the 9th fret, and the 12th fret. The 12th fret is, the reason why there's 2 dots there is because that's kind of where the guitar is split in half, and everything is going to repeat itself an octave higher in that region of the guitar. Now let me get into the left hand, and this is an important part because you want to start off using some good technique in the left hand, which will make the guitar much easier to play as you develop the muscles. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you're bending at the joints of all the fingers. So whether you're playing some open chords or whether you're playing one note at a time, you really want to make sure that your left hand joints are always bent, as opposed to locking the joints like this. And the reason why is because it's actually going to slow you down, because if your finger's locked, then it has to come unlocked before it can move to the next note. But there's some exceptions to this rule. We're going to get into some instances where we have to lock that finger joint. And when we get into some bar chords and some more advanced techniques, there are definitely some exceptions to that. But start off trying to do the best you can at keeping all the joints bent. The next thing I want to talk about is the thumb position, the left-hand thumb, of where it's supposed to sit on the guitar. It can be in a lot of different locations, but here's some things that you want to keep in mind to avoid. The first thing is you don't want to have your palm flat against the back of the neck. The second thing is you don't want to have the thumb in line with the neck of the guitar, going kind of straight down. The next thing is you don't want the thumb to come around underneath the neck of the guitar. I occasionally see students do that, because the thumb needs to be in the back of the instrument, supporting it and kind of using it's kind of a leverage point. And here's some locations that I think are acceptable. You can have it on the top of the instrument. You want to avoid getting too far over, though. Even though Jimi Hendrix, used his thumb actually to play notes and kind of curl over the top side of the fingerboard, you want to at first avoid that, at least until you get to his level. And so what I like to do is either have it on the top, I think that's okay, and you can even have it down a little bit farther, all the way towards the thumb could be actually almost a little bit underneath the back of the guitar. And so when we get into bar chords and some other more advanced chords, you'll need that thumb to drop lower to be able to reach all the notes. And generally my thumb is going to be in a vertical position, so keep that also in mind. And it's also generally going to be locked unless it's on the top portion of the guitar, the neck of the guitar. Then it's going to be slightly bent. The next thing I want to talk about is how to hold a pick. So what I want you to do first is grab the pick in your left hand at the point, take your right thumb and place it directly over the pick, so the thumbprint is covering the entire pick, but the point should be coming out at a right angle if you hold your thumb vertically. The next thing, what I want you to do is hold the pick with the index and the thumb finger to where the index finger is holding the pick on the side of the finger, not the fingerprint portion. The reason why is because that's going to change the angle of the pick that I'm going to show you in a second. So if you're holding the pick correctly, you should be able to hold up the pick and make an OK sign. The next thing I want to show you is the pick angle. As mentioned earlier, when we hold the pick on the side of this first finger, it allows us to rotate the pick with our thumb around that first finger, creating a different angle against the string. So what we can do is we can place the pick along the string of the guitar. This is what I call zero angle. And if I put a slight downward angle by cracking that first thumb joint, that puts the pick on edge against the string. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow us to slice through the strings much easier and fall through it, and versus something that's flat against the string. And so when I go downward, it's going to be on one edge of the pick, and when I'm going up, it's going to be on the opposite edge of the pick. It looks like this. The one thing that you have to be a little careful with is if you have too much of an angle, you're going to get this kind of scrapey sound as you play the top strings, or the 6th string and the 5th and the 4th string. The reason why is because those strings are actually what we call wound strings, so there's a little bit of a texture to it that you can get this kind of scrapey kind of sound to it. So you have to maybe back off a little bit on the pick angle when you're playing those strings. So be careful. You have to experiment to kind of find the sweet spot where the pick is still kind of on edge and slicing through the strings, but it's not to the point of where the scrape sound is masking the actual note itself. Thanks for watching this first series of beginning guitar. In the next one, we're going to get into actually playing some notes and eventually lead us into playing our first song. So tune in for the next one, and be sure to check out my website for more information, and also send me some feedback, and be glad to hear from you, and hopefully we can connect and maybe even do a lesson online. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.